Hey friends, Zach Saxton here. I am up in the park and I found a well-lit area, or I created a well-lit area with my bicycle flashlight, and wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the use of cannabis as a plant teacher and ally. And I think it's a very important thing to discuss in this modern paradigm with the change in interest and increase in interest in cannabis. And I don't see a whole lot of people talking about the use of it as a teacher and as an ally in a shamanistic context, if you will. So I wanted to go into that a little bit and share some of the experience of how I work with this plant and what it really means to me. And also, well, I'll just start with here for now. I think that the most important thing to keep in mind is that when we're changing the way that we work with a plant or approaching a new plant, what comes about from it is largely what we put into it. And that doesn't mean it's a fabrication. It's just that we're psychological creatures. You know, like what we experience, the way that we perceive it, the way we map it mentally is going to largely affect what we get out of it. And that's just a psychological boundary that we have to come to understand and live with. So that being said, with cannabis, a lot of people approach it probably with lackluster or vanity or something, you know, using it as just a tool for a high or as an intoxicant, perhaps. And I'm not here to say that that's inherently wrong, but I am going to say that it's a markedly different experience when we learn to work with the plant as an ally and as a teacher, at least in my experience. And what that really translates to is a difference in the protocol of use and the intention or the actual method of use. So this is a plant that I've been working with for a long time, and I've taken years off of use, and I've used it regularly for years, and I've kind of seen the rainbow of effects, and I've learned a lot, and I've seen how to abuse it, and it doesn't surprise me at all that the culture does abuse it, especially the more that I understand neurochemistry and pharmacology and things. It's a very profound dopamine supplement, and living in this gray tone, monotonous Babylon society, I can understand why the supplementation of dopamine might be necessary in a lot of ways. But as a person who's passionate about really honoring this creation and trying to live in harmony, I'm always seeking to refine my methods and refine my interactions with the world. And I would encourage anyone else to, consider how you could do that too, increasing your mindfulness and, just pondering on how you interact with the world. So on that note, let me go into the cannabis thing. Let's discard the idea for a second of psychoactives and recreational things, and let's consider plant medicines that have been used for thousands of years, throughout the world. This is one of those, and this has not only medicine effects in terms of whatever somebody might use it for, back pain and glaucoma, but cannabis is also has a very rich history of use as an entheogen. If you look back at some of the earliest writings by Western anthropologists even, you'll see that they note hashish creating visions for people and creating trance states. So to contextualize in our modern world, our modern minds, it might be necessary to go ahead and put it in more of the framework of psychedelics, ayahuasca, peyote. So let's say, I don't know if any of you have been to a ceremony that has been conducted in indigenous or semi-indigenous protocol, but let's consider cannabis a little bit more, for just a second at least. Let's consider that maybe it resonates a little bit more with that method of use or that means of use, rather than something more lackluster or lacking meaning. And when we do this, when we change this framework for it, we completely change the way that our psychology responds to the plant. And also, from my experience, I think that we actually get different effects and different neurochemical effects. And also, on a spiritual sense, the plant will speak to us differently. We get different medicine. And this is where, I guess, medicine is a key word here. And it's a strange word, considering it's been hijacked by the FDA. But it's a word that really comes from the heart, and it resonates with me a lot in the Native American practice, Native American culture. medicine work, you know, spirit work. They're one and the same, you know. It's the work of finding medicine in life, pursuing medicine, teaching, helping, being selfless. You know, it's another, the medicine path is another alternative take on essentially the, you know, the Jesus selflessness and these different paradigms of goodliness that, you know, come about. So when we use these, when we start to work with these plants as teachers and as allies and as a medicine, you know, it changes it. It really, 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 really does. So with something like cannabis, that might seem a little strange because you might be thinking, oh, well, it just gets you high or whatever. But let's think of, you know, something like, you know, ayahuasca, something like mushrooms, you know. Somebody could just take that and say, oh, well, yeah, I just got high, you know. But somebody else can go into it with intention in ceremony and come out of it with not only, you know, life-changing experiences, but actual permanent and lasting neurological and neurochemical changes that are actually observable in the dynamics of their brain. So it's not just fluffy stuff here. And when we consider that cannabis has the same propensity, the same power, it is also a teacher. And it is no less a teacher than the peyote, than the ayahuasca. Then we begin to see it in a different framework and open ourselves up to a lot of different potentials in my experience. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to go ahead and scroll through and see if you guys said anything, and then I'm going to go into, I guess, approaching the plant. Okay, I can't see all of them. It's kind of messing up, but yeah, thank you all for being here. So on that note, all ceremony and all approaching of sacred plants, thank you. Ceremony, like in my post just said, I just made this post on the right up here. I kind of got all emotional for a second thinking about it. That, you know, ceremony starts when you begin the thought of the ceremony. So when I thought about doing this, that's when this started. You know, the ceremony begun when I started to think about it. So think about that in life for a second. You know, like we make a ceremony. If we make it meaningless, then it's meaningless. If we make it meaningful, then it's meaningful. So what I use this plant for in particular is for prayer. I use it when I pray. And it's a little different than normal prayer. I mean, it's the same thing, I guess, but it seems to take it a certain different direction and provide a certain catalyst to deepen the trance during the prayer, as well as after the actual smoking, after I inhale mindfully. I will then go about my day or go about my night in a way that is receptive and mindful, so as to listen to spirit and hear those responses that I asked for humbly. Okay? So what is all, the only real difference here is that we're changing our context and we're changing our input. So on that note, let me get my, not joint, but my my ceremonial smoking tool here out. Let's recontextualize this plant teacher together, my friends. So before I smoke, first of all, I have to feel good about it. You know, I have to feel connected to the plant. It has to feel like it is a good time. And that is of utmost importance when working with any plant teacher. You know, and anybody who works with ayahuasca and peyote and things like that will tell you for sure, you know, that you can't just go around just shoving plant teachers in whenever you want. You know, you have to listen and find that resonance. And I don't have the answers, my friends. You do. And Spirit does. God does. You know, it's all one. You know, the messages come from inside. So when we listen, you know, we will hear what is right, you know. So listen to what I have to say if you would like, but listen to your heart and listen to the world and listen to your interactions with these plants and see what the plants say to you about how you should be using them. So before I utilize it, I first of all want to feel good about it. And right now, this feels very good. I feel very blessed. I'm very grateful that you all are here. What I do next is I get the plant out, actually, and I literally do a prayer. And prayer, for me, is not necessarily something of words. It might be something of emptiness. I might just take a moment to be grateful and clear, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and do that. Like that time, for instance, I went in pretty clear. I was completely neutral, just quiet. And then naturally these words rose up in my mind of just, you know, thank you so much for the blessings of these plants. And, you know, it's just these gratitude words, these poems that rise up from the heart. You know, that's what prayer is for me. Whether it's silence or whether it's internal words, it isn't really of significance. But that being said, once we've set the intention with the plant, we will then, you know, light the plant and consume it. Now, what is different, though, and this is the key here, it really, is what are we doing when we're smoking, and why are we smoking in the first place? You know, we set our intention. If we have a reason to go to it, you know, like we're coming here to pray, then that's all right. But we shouldn't, in my opinion, we shouldn't still just be puff, 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 you know, mindlessly inhaling. Each inhalation is the ceremony. Each inhalation is the medicine. So try not to see the forest as the forest, but maybe, or lose sight of the trees for the forest, or, you know what that saying is, you know, see the individual and see the moment, and try not to lose yourself in the vastness of it, okay? And so what I mean by that literally is, in the smoke inhalations, I noticed that each time I just began smoking again 7 months ago, I think, and I had taken years off before this. And so I'm kind of developing, it's new to me now to develop a new protocol in my adulthood, in my maturity, in my true passion to try to serve and be harmonious. And it's still coming to me, but one of the main things that I'd really like to emphasize that I find is just markedly qualitatively different is the actual experience of smoking. I found that when I used to smoke, because I smoked a lot of weed when I was younger, and I would a lot of times be smoking, and I would end up with certain like sinus congestions, or kind of like I would feel like coughy or wheezy and stuff from it. And I noticed that does not happen when I'm smoking with prayer. And it literally, it's not just that I'm saying, oh, you know, I'm blessed by the plant. It is a different protocol with which I inhale and exhale. And I feel when I do it, and I'm going to try my best to do it on the video, because I'll smoke a little bit of this on the video, but I don't know, I'm still kind of getting used to it. But what it feels like literally is I'll draw the smoke in my mouth a little bit and then inhale it, and then it feels as though it like locks in my solar plexus, and it feels like it's a cauldron boiling. And when I'm just holding it in, I'm tuning into my prayer, I'm tuning into my connection with the divine, I'm tuning into good things. And then when I exhale, the exhale is the most important part. The exhale has to come very naturally and organically. We should never exhale with exhaustion. You know, exhaling is actually a relaxation of the lungs. It doesn't use muscles. So what you want to do is try to relax and allow it to mindfully expel. But when I am doing it with prayer, I really feel how it's as though like I inhale the prayer, and then I feel this connection, and then I exhale this. I don't know if I'm exhaling the prayer or exhaling my boundaries or something, but I mean, in terms of like energy work or shamanistic stuff, you know, this is profound game changer, my friends, in our ability to redirect our energy flow. And that is how humans have used these plants for thousands of years. They are powerful in their ability to redirect not only our energy flow, but our mindset, our emotions, and our spiritual path and our spiritual patterns. So when we ask these plants, when we ask the divine, when we ask Great Spirit to help us to find our paths when using these plants, we are often pleasantly surprised in what we find. And so the same as what I said with the prayers before I smoked it all. I'm going to inhale with the prayer in mind as well. It's not necessarily words. Sometimes I'm thinking about people. Sometimes I'm thinking about the people I love and the things I care about when I'm smoking. You know, that sometimes that's the prayers. Asking for good things, asking for healing, asking for a better world. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's just faith. It's just tuning in and just quieting myself. But that's what prayer is. You know, prayer is a dynamic thing. It's not like a slingshot where you just get your ideas ready and then you shoot it at a deity. At least not to me.
I can only see part of your guys' messages, but I appreciate the conversations going on.
I'll just speak from the heart and smoke for a minute and see what happens. The prayer technique that I use is something that has come to me through spirit, my own work, but I do think it probably resonates and is similar to a lot of the ancient uses in India and in Africa as well. And I am not incredibly versed in the specifics of Rastafarianism, but I do know that the method with which they pray very much resembles this. What the Rastas say is that when smoking, we can clear our mind, and that God's message is inherently in us, so that through clearing the mind, we hear God's message in us. And that is very similar to a lot of what you hear with natives in their reverence of the different plant teachers. Peyote, something I read, is that the natives would say that peyote will show us God's path for ourselves. And I believe that in my experience. All the plant teachers can help us with that. There's always so many paths in front of us, but when we center ourselves and we enter this trance state with prayer, and when we enter this unified connection to love with prayer, I think that we're really able to sometimes feel intuitively certain connections that we aren't normally able to. So I guess, friends, if you are smoking and have medicine as well, I guess thank you for joining me. And if not, thank you for sitting in the circle and praying and being present. I've never done like a virtual smoke session. I see people on YouTube do that. I just thought of something else to say. I thought of this on the way up here. A big part of what we gain out of approaching plant spirits in ceremony is this medicine effect. But how we really embrace and reach this medicine effect is by approaching with a certain amount of vulnerability. We all hide things from ourselves, and we're always worried about things. The more that we can get ourselves to comfortably approach the moment in a meditative state, whether or not we're using plants, the more that we will find ourselves having an actual intuitive understanding as to what we should and should not be doing. We all have this compass inside of ourselves that is guiding us, but we're all scared and we're all nervous in a lot of ways, and that's something that especially I think the cannabis can be particularly beneficial in. Not suppressing our fears, we should be mindful to make sure that we're not doing that, but it's important to know that we have allies, whether those allies are friends or those allies are ancient plant teachers, you know, that we can call upon when we are in a time of need. The last thing I said also brings up a valid point, I think. I would very much encourage one to not use cannabis when one is in a volatile emotional state. And at least I say that as someone who reveres it as a plant teacher. I understand it's also a medicine, and you know, somebody can use it if they're stressed or, you know, depressed or something. I'm not saying that one should never do that, but I think it's important that we try to ground ourselves and get to a very mindful, present state before utilizing any plant teacher. And it's similar things I've heard reflected in food. And I think it might be like Book of Thomas, Dead Sea Scrolls, I'm not really sure. But that we kind of lost my train of thought. Embracing the cosmic flow, my friends. I was halfway wondering if some of you would be watching this paying attention to my articulations, and I was also halfway wondering if my own articulations, how they would function through the duration of a smoke session on live video. And so far I think my neuron functioning has been okay, but I humbly accept my loss of train of thought. Aho. Well, this might be a good point to leave off. The only other thing I really wanted to emphasize to you guys is that after this point, okay, because I'm going to get off of here because honestly at this point I'm just trying to think of what to say to you guys, and you know, kind of losing the momentum with the plant, and I'm here to speak to the plant more than anything, but I'm also here to share these ideas with you. But after this point, okay, after the smoking, what I'm going to do is I'm on a bike and I'm out in a park, so I'm going to get on my bike and I'm going to be very receptive and stay tuned in, and I'm going to keep these prayers flowing, you know, and that's the really important part, okay? So the ceremony starts when we smoke, you know, or the ceremony starts when we think about it, but the ceremony starts when we begin it, But the ceremony does not end when we're done smoking, okay? And that's how, again, we can see that framework of looking at it more as like a psychedelic, like ayahuasca or something, as opposed to, you know, just a bowl you would smoke to get high or something like that. If we want to learn, if we want to get the medicine out of an experience, we need to not only be mindful and respectful at the moment of our consumption of drinking the ayahuasca or inhaling the cannabis, but rather we need to continue this mindfulness and continue our receptivity, because the medicine is not some kind of magic that we're expecting. The medicine is in our own diligence, and we're working with these plants as an ally. They're not somebody that's meant to just grab us and carry us. Stay mindful, you know. If you want to do the medicine work with the plants, then do the medicine work in your life, and then the plants will call out to you at the due times, and then you will carry the essence of the plant with you. And the more that I do this continually through time with different plants, the more that I find I actually can carry the essence of that plant all the time. And I don't mean that I'm smoking all the time or using ayahuasca or something like that all the time, but that when we form this resonant connection with these plant spirits, the ceremony with them does not end, the medicine does not end. And this is reflected especially in some of the ancient practices with the ayahuasqueros in South America. At a certain point, they do not drink the ayahuasca anymore, they just sing the songs that were taught to them by the ayahuasca, and the same medicine occurs. Does anybody have any questions? Questions, thoughts, prayers? I'm really grateful for you guys. I guess I wanted to take a moment to be vulnerable too. I was asked to about struggles, you know, and because I post positive and inspiring things, you know, they're like, you know, I would like to, somebody asked me to post about some of my struggles and things I've gone through, and all the time, man. Consistent struggles, you know. I stay positive, and I keep my faith strong, and I try to cultivate that faith stronger every day. But struggles are very consistent for us all, you know. And it's important to know how to redirect our energy flow. And I think that's one thing I'd like to say about tonight is that I took a little nap earlier, and I woke up so groggy. It was 9 o'clock, and I was not ready to go to bed at all, but I was so groggy, and I just felt this, like, stagnancy, and it was, like, one of those nights where I'm like, oh, man, am I just gonna, like, sit here and just kind of, like, almost, like, fester, you know, I mean, I don't know, I don't live too toxically, but I could just see almost like I would sit around and be, like, poking on Facebook and just, like, almost maybe eating mindlessly or something, I don't know, it just felt like this stagnant feeling, and I was like, no, 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 so I, like, literally prayed, like, I stopped. And I was like, please, 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 just whatever I can do, whether it's go to sleep or anything, just let me know, because I don't want to just fester. I want to serve. I want this night to be something good. And I put that prayer off. And then instantly I got a few indications of things I can do. And I think maybe it was like I got hydrated, and then maybe I stood outside and prayed and got some fresh air for a second. Then all of a sudden I was like, you know, I need to wash my hands off, wash my feet off, and kind of get some, you know, fresh splash water on my face even, you know, kind of just refresh myself. And after like 3 or 4 things, I was feeling this energy flow building up. And then, you know, here I am, you know, I felt drawn to make this video and things. So it's kind of interesting how life works, you know, and the same thing can happen with the plant, you know. And it's not that we should use it, you know, like I said, we should probably be mindful of using it not when we're too emotionally worked up. But it's very powerful to know that we have a friend there, you know, not just cannabis, but spirit in general. And spirit works through all these plants. God works through the creation, you know, and we have this creation and these tools accessible, and I think it's important to talk about it, and that's why I'm here, you know. And if any of this is stoned ramblings, so be it, you know. But I think it's important to at least speak of the potential of reverence and reforming connection of heart and connection with just true pursuits, true medicine work. Any thoughts of other methods of smoking or other methods of consuming the plant? Wonderful question, Anne Murphy. Thank you for asking, my friend. Yes, they're all completely different. You know, vaporizing is obviously an awesome one, or even using concentrates and, you know, dabbing mindfully with the fact that it's a vaporized product ultimately is going to be less heavy on our body in certain ways. So, you know, I utilize the spectrum with this plant in particular. I really value all of them. Smoking is something that I try to do smoke in particular just for very ritualized, like I am now, sitting here and praying in ritual. I would sometimes use I concentrate a little bit more as a medicine. You know, I still approach it with prayer and intent every time. But I sometimes, because of the effect of it, it's a little bit easier to use like one hit of that and like clear my lungs out, or almost like clear nausea or something like that. And whereas with smoking, it's smoking's heavy. You know, it's a intense thing. It's very yang. You know, I don't want too much of smoke in myself. You know, I smoke when I feel drawn to it. Gotta be the plant. Excuse me. Eating, though, is probably, I guess, what you're referencing more than anything. And eating is extremely profound and completely different, but a wonderful way to connect with the plant. I would definitely encourage anybody who's looking to actually connect with the plant in a mindful way to consider working with consuming edibles in small doses. You know, you always, with any plant teacher, please use a dose that resonates with you. You know, you don't need the 5 grams of mushrooms in silent darkness like McKenna prescribes, in my opinion. You know, maybe in time, you know, or maybe right now, but just feel it out. You know, it's okay to do little bits. You know, myself, I get very affected by small doses of things. You know, so with consuming them, especially, a lot of people, they eat too much of it because they're like, oh, I've smoked a lot of weed, and you get knocked out, or you'll wind up tripping, and it will be very strong, and it'll be very overwhelming. You know, eating it is very, very, very intense. You know, but I think it's a great way to get to know the plant, and it's a great way to work with it regularly. If you are working with this essence and carrying it with you daily, you know, if you find a mindful dose that is not going to interfere, but is something that, you know, you can use intermittently through your days or through your weeks or whatever, it's a great way to connect with it. But it's different, and I think there's some chemistry to explain that. Somebody here probably knows better than me. I don't know off the top of my head, but like there's a certain THC acid, I think, in the plant, and then when you cook it, it converts the THC into like THCA or one of the other. You know, there's a number of different family of compounds, but I think it actually does have different effects in neurochemical reactions. So I think, because in my experience, edibles, it's more trippy, I would say, you know, inherently. And scroll up and see if there's any more questions. Yeah, indeed. And actually, that's a good point. This is stereotype dreadlock hippie thing. And I would like to point out the root of this stereotype, or at least speculate on some ponderings I've had. Because this isn't just a, you know, white dude in California thing or whatever. And it's also not a black dude in Jamaica thing. You know, the roots of cannabis use and dreadlocks is actually rooted, as far as I can tell, in India. Ancient times by the sadhus. The sadhu spiritual seekers didn't quit interfering with their natural progress of their hair, like similar to the Nazarite vow, and they utilize the cannabis mindfully, and that's their particular sacrament, or they probably use others plants as well. But yeah, I have somehow stumbled in, darn it, I've stumbled in to being the dreadlock hippie archetype, and in part I resonate with, I guess, the modern American one. You know, I like, you know, I listen to music and, you know, oh, I'm stoned and hearing music, you know, one of them. But I much more so resonate with a different method of use, and that's what I'm trying to speak of. Let's see if there's anything else. Love and peace and prayers. Aho, my friends. Thank you all for being here. Right on. He's got dreads as well. Truly, though, to describe some qualitative differences in terms of mental effects, I mean, you know, smoking a joint, driving around and listening to music is one thing, but you sit here in prayer and sit in ceremony, you know, you can get, you know, whatever you need, you know. I mean, if you're ready for out-of-body experience, if you're ready for, you know, visuals, or I don't mean ready for as in, you know, qualified, but like if that's what you need, you know, if that's what spirit you need from spirit right then, you know, you can find that. It's a very powerful plant. It's a very powerful experience. A lot of people get overwhelmed by it. Some people, I get anxious from it. I'm like, do you do it in ceremony with prayer? Or are you smoking a joint and hanging out? I'm not saying anything's inherently wrong, but if you want a controlled reaction, have a controlled context. Create a controlled reaction. If you want a controlled result, and leave room for the mystical flow of the plant. Don't confine it. In my opinion, I don't think we should confine it and say, oh, I'm going to get high. This is what it's going to do. The tunnel vision, you know? Put the prayers off. I'm receptive. I'm here. If I need to get excited, I'm excited. If I need to freaking cry, I'm going to start crying, you know? Same thing as all the plant teachers, you know? Mescaline and all these things, not necessarily fun. It's usually not fun for a lot of excuse me. A lot of it's tears, and a lot of it's going inward, you know, reflections, and that's okay, you know. I don't come to these plants for fun, you know. I mean, sometimes I may, but my mindfulness, my intent to work with these plants is as a medicine and as a teacher, and to help me to get closer to God and get closer to my own resonance and my own harmony, so that I can do good things. Oh, another thing, coughing. See, I just coughed a minute ago, because I actually told you guys I inhaled part of the leaf. I messed up. Coughing is a super important part of it, and I'm so glad I remembered this. Because in my experience using cannabis as an ally, coughing is like an integral aspect of it. Like when you happen to cough, I mean, first of all, cannabis is an expectorant. What it is doing in your lungs is actually causing the little like hairs to vibrate, and it makes the mucus break up, and it makes it more capable of coming out. So your lungs actually want to expel stuff when you're smoking. So part of like coughing from smoking is not just like, oh, you're smoking, oh, look, you coughed, and you know that means it's bad. It's like, no. Coughing is this natural response when we're using it, you know, as a medicine, or when we're smoking a medicine, I guess, better said. Coughing is part of the medicine effect, actually. It's an expectorant. And you see a lot better reaction of that with dabs, you know. If you take the right dose of that, you can really feel how all of a sudden you'll cough, and then all this mucus will come up, and your lungs are not really exhausted, you know. If you get the dose too high with smoking or a dab, it'll exhaust your lungs still, but... Oh, my little guy went out. Okay, hold on. Let me see what this says. Okay, well, hold on. Let me finish my thought, I guess, about the coughing. Is that when I'm being conscious and I'm approaching this correctly, when I'm approaching it mindfully, the coughs will come up at synchronistic moments, and they're not just the expectorant medicine quality for me, but rather they are these energetic expulsions, ayahuasca-esque, if you will. They're purgings, like releasing energy and stuff. And I'm serious, you know. It sounds kind of crazy, and you know, maybe it is, but I will feel like a huge difference in, like I said, if I'm smoking mindfully, I hold it in, and it doesn't exhaust my lungs as much. It comes in and out. But when my lungs do choose to cough during this mindful smoke session, it feels like it's this catalyst to just, I don't know, release all this energy and release all this bad, funky, toxic stuff, you know, whether that's emotional or mental or whatever. So yeah, it's pretty wild. And honestly, like I said, I've noticed that even more with dabs, because with cannabis concentrates, because it's such a clear experience. It doesn't, there's not smoke, there's no combustion, so it's less harsh on the lungs. But I have had a handful of experiences where I was coughing hard, you know, from smoking or from dabbing or whatever. And, you know, my previous context would be like, oh, coughing, you know, that's you know, lightweight, or, you know, not that I would ever think that really, but, you know, that's kind of the culture is, you know, oh, you know, if you smoke, you know, you should be able to not cough if you're a smoker. But I really feel blessed with it now. Like, when it happens, you know, it's intense, man. It's intense how much energy I'll release, because I'll release energy regardless, even if I don't cough. But when it happens, it's, yeah, like I said, ayahuasca-esque, to say the least. Orally ingesting is something experience good effects. Alright, like, I guess I'm going to end this, and I'll just come back and comment on your guys' stuff, because I can't even read half of them anyways. It won't let me see them all, so the phone's kind of messing up, I guess. Or, it kind of goes to ... That's all I see. Oh, another thing, when you do cough, don't be afraid to spit the stuff out. So maybe smoke by yourself mindfully the first few times so you don't feel self-conscious about being in front of people. Because right now I know I'm personally self-conscious about spitting something up probably in front of who knows how many people will see this. But whether that's ego or some sort of, you know, actual protective mechanism looking out for your psychological well-being. I will speak with you all soon. Thank you for joining. And thank you so much, Sacred Cannabis. And I'm going to leave this out, or leave the rest out, here, mindfully, to biodegrade into this area. Thank you so much, my friend. Not just cannabis, but you. This collection of beautiful flowers that grew at a certain time on this earth. It's so beautiful to be here right now. Love you guys.